Yeah, so let's first start with the term pioneer. Because this actually leads exactly to the answer of the question. So our motivation in the 80s was exactly to go in an interdisciplinary way into a new field or creating a new field. So also in art history, if people started working truly interdisciplinary, so it means of being open to leave their own fields and conquer with other new fields or explore a new field with others, then a new kind of era arised. And this is what actually had been our intention at the time, although we didn't expect what happened afterwards. You know, mid of the 80s, no one actually in the wider field was talking about digital, was talking about art and digital technology. It was not the time where anyone talked about art and technology in general. So what we had, let's say our achievement, was the openness to be willing to leave our fields. I left my field as a graphic designer, filmmaker. The programmers from Chaos Computer Club, they left their field as programmers and hackers. And we more or less gathered together in a place which is now called media art or media design. So it's more or less discovering something through being open and brave and leaving things behind you. So there are some of delicate points as you named them. Some are internal, some are view from outside. So let's start from the view from outside. You know, if you are working in such a wide variety of fields, what we do in the meantime. So if you go to our website, you see 3 doors. It's media art, it's communication with media and space, and the third one is research and development. So the problem is, for the outsiders, or let's say for the scene very often, for the artists we are too commercial, for the researchers we are too arty, for the designers we are too techy, so it's a big problem. So actually you're not accepted in the traditional fields, which is very helpful, especially in terms of being known, because no one is writing actually about what we are doing in the feuilleton, for instance. So we are not, let's say in the traditional media, we are not existing, or what we are doing is not existence. This makes things quite difficult, especially for clients, or especially if you want to exhibit. So a white cube curator is looking very closely what is your background. And if they see that you are doing, for instance, things for Deutsche Bank, it's very difficult to be accepted in the art world. So, and it's in all the other disciplines which we are covering the same. So this is a very big downside, or let's say it's a challenge. It's a big challenge. And also from the inside, you know, we have this kind of wings. You know, some wings, they want to go more into the tech part, some want to go more into the commercial part, the other ones say, oh, we have to go more into the art part. So it's this kind of constant, let's say constant, I don't want to say fight, but it consumes a lot of energy. On the other hand, this kind of energy creates heat, and this also creates something like, we would say, burning our things down and creating new things which can come up. So that's quite important.
Is the one you want.
So we talked about the downsides, now the other way around, the upsides. For a lot of brands, it's something very interesting because we are special. So we are not comparable, and if they have, and sometimes they have this kind of assignments where they are looking for new ways to look at something of whatever their brand is or their products, then they're coming to us. So this is something, because you are different and they have the assignment to go for something different, they're coming. That's very good. So and the same also for, let's say, new employees or people who want to come and say, okay, I don't fit actually really into whatever, a developer studio, or I don't actually fit into a animation studio, or I don't fit into a spatial communication studio. I'm this in-between person, and so we get weird people, and this is very helpful in terms of staying innovative, you know, because innovation only comes from the people who are not following the usual tracks. So if you're following the usual tracks, you always drive the same way. But if you're open to make detours, then it's something that's quite interesting. So this is important for us. So actually, we use a lot of energy to convince people. And this is on one hand by finding the right words, finding the right illustrations, but very, very important by doing prototypes, you know, showing them how things are working. So if we look, for instance, BMW, the kinetic sculpture, we only could convince them by showing them this kind of prototype.
It's impossible to explain by words.
You know, and the big problem especially in large-scale corporations is that mid-size, or let's say mid-level management is presenting a weird idea to an upper management level. This never works because they have fear. They are always going for the secure thing. So this is the second learning, is that beside making prototypes and let's say good rationals behind it, is try to talk to CEOs. You know, they can make the decisions. They are the ones who usually should not have fear, and this is my experience. They don't have fear. So Otto Bock, for instance, as you mentioned, we talked directly to Mr. Nader, who is the boss, or the owner. He is the owner, you know, and only with him we could do this kind of weird things. And let's say the third, I did a lot of different parameters, but the third parameter would probably be that we have a good portfolio. So, you know,
They trust you.
They trust us at the beginning, you know, but it's always in a project. At the very beginning, it's this kind of pink glasses, and they trust us. And then it's always the same. They get fear about their own braveness, and then after a while we catch them again, and then it usually goes to a happy end.
But it also happened the opposite. I mean, that you developed a project, an artwork for commissioned by a private investor or a brand or an industry that was also exposed in a gallery or museum or institution.
Yeah. So for instance, the Otto Bock installation was actually done for the expo in Shanghai. Is now at the
That's a part of the Ars Electronica
Museum. Then we also do projects, let's say small version of big projects, which actually have been commissioned by big brands, and we had a lot of learning, and with this we are also creating art installations for collectors. So there is a kind of way from the industry into the art world, taking experience and money, and money means time, which we spent already to develop something, and creating then affordable things for a collector, for instance. So that's a let's say unintentional strategy. So if you see the
compared to when you started, I mean,
yeah,
in the period of these 20 years.
So if you see the usual curves, then you have this kind of, let's say, underestimation of something, of new technologies, of developments. This is what we experienced in the 80s in Europe. Then you have the totally overestimation. This was the bubble in the 90s, end of the 90s. And then it goes to a kind of plateau, which has for sure a kind of rising moment in it. But compared, let's say, to the 80s and 90s, and let's say the beginning of this century, where open source had been a very important and driving force, now it's the startup scene.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's so much innovation, or let's say development, coming out of the startup scene, because there is in the meantime a kind of way how to make money out of technology, and so this is weird enough, but this is a kind of source of innovation at the moment.
Don't you think that many languages are really start to be really similar one to each other? I think
Exactly.
many disciplines in terms of design or audiovisual performances or graphic design, processing, aesthetic in a way. Also, that is also a fact. I mean,
Yeah. So you know,
Artcom is very peculiar in a way. There is nothing similar to it. Really.
No, but what happens at the end, at the moment, is that let's say students, they have to learn, or have to have a much wider knowledge in terms of discipline. So let's say one who is only going into illustration, or one is only going into book design, they will have a very difficult future. You know, at least if you're a good illustrator, you have to know something about animation, or how to bring, for instance, your illustration to life, or having it time-based or interactive at the end. So if I look at into my department, students at the basic course, they get all the disciplines now, and it's absolutely helpful. In the very first semester, they start learning processing, and
in Berlin or
in Berlin?
UCLA?
In Berlin. UCLA anyhow, because Casey Rees is there.
Okay, of course.
So no, in Berlin. So the first assignment is doing something with processing. So they start thinking into code already, and if they're then later on, because they have the capability, for instance, to illustrate in a very nice, in a very peculiar way, a special way, they then are capable, for instance, to make this dynamic. And I think this is what happens at the moment. You have to have this kind of broad knowledge about 2D, 3D, 4D, interactive, networked kind of knowledge. So there are a lot of questions now. So let's say the first question is what happens in the moment in the art market. So there is a kind of let's say why, which we see. So there's one direction, and this is the traditional art market, which is exploding, which gets more and more strict in terms of curator, gallerist, white cube, and fairs and auctions. So this is a field and collectors. This is a field which gets stronger and stronger and more, let's say, enclosed in itself.
Yeah.
And then we have on the other side what you mentioned: festivals, schools, also let's say
media centers, hybrid spaces like Arcelor.
And then also let's say which are already also dancing with the industry. So these are this kind of split up of things, and they are now two separate worlds, and there's no connection in between. There's no connection. So I don't know how this will look like in the future, but at the moment it's this drive into both.
Okay, we will not put it in the interview, but I'm not agree with you because Arcom is in the middle.
Yeah. No, actually we don't. For instance, we are not, or very rarely, compared to what we are doing, invited to a real art show. You know, it's still this special kind of media art shows. It's still the festival culture. It's a traveling circus, and it's not. You don't see us at Miami Art Basel. You don't see us in. You saw us in important museums, but it's more on occasions where, especially in the 90s, where a curator wanted to show that he is ahead of time. But it was not seriously understood what we did, but it had something to do with media, it had something to do with internet. So
yeah, but it is a struggle. You're totally
Yeah.
right. It is a struggle.
Yeah.
It is a struggle
You
also
know-
for us, also for the curators involved in
Yeah.
well. I mean,
and
It
it's
is a
very
struggle.
difficult, you know, if we would go into the traditional art market with the galleries, no one could afford our pieces because they are technically
yeah, not sellable.
and
in a way,
they're
not
very
collectible,
expensive.
Very expensive.
And you know, if they have their 50% share, no way, because technology is already so expensive. So we are selling things, but we're selling art pieces without the traditional art market. You
Yes.
know, or not in the traditional art market. We don't have a galleries, so sometimes we are lucky we got a call and do something.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Joachim.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay.